Okay, everybody, I think we are live. First and foremost, good evening, everybody. It is August 4th, 2022, and we are reporting live from the Flatiron building. Yes, we are right outside of Flatiron, near Madison Square Park. And man, look at that view of the Empire State Building. Absolutely gorgeous tonight as we start off the stream. So tonight is going to be an action-packed stream. There was a lot that happened today on Wall Street. We are going to be talking about some corporate earnings that reported. We're going to be talking about two specific enterprise software companies, one being Datadog, ticker symbol DDOG, which reported a fantastic quarter today after the bell. They beat on both the top and the bottom line revenue. We're going to be talking about Atlassian, which is an Australian enterprise software company under the ticker symbol TEAM. Or team. They also reported another fantastic quarter, but I kind of want to analyze these two specific companies in a little bit of a different way. So even though we're going to be talking about the financials, we're going to be talking about revenue, free cash flow, gross margins, I want to give you guys some insight on specific things that you should look for when we are analyzing or going through an earnings report of an enterprise software company specifically, not only from an investment standpoint, but there's a lot of people who will send me emails, send me direct messages on Twitter or Instagram asking me about different career paths. So like, hey, I sort of like the career path I'm on right now, but I don't think I'm making that much money. How could I make some more money there? And what I would say is I think you have to be very cognizant about the structure of a business, right, in relation to incomes or salaries that particular company is going to give out. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say if you are, well, I guess I'll start off by saying this. Generally speaking, the closer you are to revenue generation, right, so the closer you are to bringing in new business for an organization, roughly or generally speaking, the more money you're going to make. So let's say if you're in back office, let's say if you're in compliance or you're an administrator, you're probably not going to be having the income opportunities or the income potential as you would if you are a salesperson or an account executive, generally speaking. Now, there are some nuances here. As we walk through the stream, we'll talk about those, and we'll also talk about some ways where we can get into those particular positions. So I think it'll tie nicely into talking about Datadog, Atlassian. But everybody, before we begin the stream, hot off the press, breaking news about 3 minutes ago here. We have some breaking news out of BlackRock. So Coinbase, the cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, has been selected by BlackRock to provide their Aladdin clients access to crypto trading and custody via Coinbase Prime. So this is breaking news, hot off the press. Really, really good news for the cryptocurrency environment, for the cryptocurrency ecosystem, because as we've been talking about on the streams, my number one sort of, I guess you could say, concern about the cryptocurrency environment is, I've said this many times, if we want to see price appreciation in digital assets such as Bitcoin, if we really want to be taken seriously, you're going to need not only regulation, but you're going to need real players in the traditional finance space, a platform to bring it to institutional clients. So BlackRock, being the largest asset manager on the planet, partnering with Coinbase to allow custody of Bitcoin, trading of Bitcoin and the like. I think this is huge for the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Now, I do want to round out the night by talking about a potential break in inflation. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think inflation is over with? I think we've potentially reached peak inflation, and we will go through some reasons why I think we could be seeing peak inflation here in the United States. So there's the quick stream recap there. And let's get to the most important part of the night, shall we? Greeting everybody who has joined the stream. Let's see who we have here, everybody. Man, it's a humid night in New York. Like in Nerd, what's up? Says first, good to see you, welcome. Schuler says hello, welcome Schuler. Sally is here, says hey Tom. Leonardo says hey Tom. Felix, welcome Felix. Dr. Mark in Texas, good to see you, Dr. Mark. Always a pleasure to see you. Carson is here, says, hey Tom, welcome Carson. Let me see if I could adjust the camera. Sometimes I feel, as we've been starting these streams, the camera quality has deteriorated. Maybe that's just because I forget to wipe off the lens, but we'll see. I see the one and only Ruby Falcone here. Good to see you, Ruby. Welcome. Jay is here. Good to see you, Jay. Busy traffic here. Let me see. Let me just reorient myself here. Warwalker, the one and only, is here. Welcome, Warwalker. Wanye Cass says, good evening, Tom. How are you? I'm doing fantastic. Man, was it a humid day, though, in the city. I mean, talk about rip-roaring temperatures. I think it almost got up to 98 degrees in the city today. And talk about the humidity. The humidity was on point today. Jamie Massetti says, thanks for another stream. Hey, Jamie, thank you so much for the kind words. Warwalker says, love the sound in New York. Sunshine After Rain is here. Welcome, Sunshine After Rain. Cat says, hey, Tom, end posters 2 nights in a row. I get to join you all. Happy to be here. Well, we're happy to have you. We're definitely happy to have you. And if you guys notice, we are starting off the stream in a different location. I did have to work, I guess you really can't call this downtown, but I mean, in relation to where I usually work, up near 57th Street, I spent the majority of my day working from 28th Street. So it's nice to get to start off the stream with a beautiful view. I see Kathy Lyons is here. Hey, Kathy, Steph Wright is my favorite person from Liverpool, England. Ruby Falcone, thank you for being a fantastic moderator. Appreciate it. Google says this week is brutal for the temperatures. It's been nuts. Dan Zhang says, hey Tom, thank you for doing the streams during the heat wave. Yes. So everybody, for those of you who aren't in New York, we are going through a really bad heat wave here. Now, usually the heat doesn't affect me too much because I kind of like the heat and humidity, but today was really, really hot and humid in the city. Susanna Herbert says, love the walks. Hello from Albany, New York. Love Albany. It is our great state's capital. Carl Winston says, earliest ever been to the stream. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Carl. Shannon says, 87 now. Feels like 98 here in Illinois. Wow. Gregory's here. Good to see you. Jason says, I guess this area is called the Flatiron District. I agree. AT4 Nerds says, my company uses Jira as a SaaS provided by Atlassian. It's a great product and an amazing company. Go team. Yeah, so that's a fantastic point. So a little bit of a background on Atlassian. So Atlassian is an enterprise software company based out of Australia. So shout out to all of our Australian viewers. We actually have a lot. I think when I checked the YouTube analytics, we have about 10% of the audience from Australia. It's crazy as that seems, but we do. And Atlassian has been on their transition to a pure play cloud company. So as they are winding down their server business and migrating all their customers over to the cloud, you know, over the past couple of years, one of the main, I guess, concerns of analysts was the compression of those gross margins. But margins are holding tight at Atlassian. Revenue growth is fantastic, and I think they beat both on the top and the bottom line. And funny enough, I have actually owned Atlassian since they had their IPO, since their initial public offering. I did sell it. I do not own any more Atlassian. I sold that right before the end of the year. But I may have to get back in the stock just because it's doing so well. The fundamentals have never looked better. And I think after today's earnings report, the stock's up 10%. We're also going to be talking about Datadog. So Datadog is another fantastic enterprise software company. They compete with the likes of Splunk. You know, Datadog actually would be a company I wouldn't mind working for, to be honest. Veronica G is flying to New York tonight. They say there may be thunderstorms this weekend. Yeah, so Veronica, I think there's thunderstorms happening right now. So when I left the office, when I walked out, I was actually seeing some heat lightning and thunder and lightning. So we have to be cognizant of that. Hey, Zach says hello from Melbourne, Australia. Good to see you. Says, well, I'm on holiday on the Gold Coast. Fantastic. Love that. The ABX girl is here. Says, I remember in New York City, the office was so cold we used to step outside for warmth. Yeah, that's one of the weird things that'll happen, or that tends to happen when it's so hot out. The ACs are cranked in the buildings, so it's almost like when you sit in your office for a prolonged period of time, it's actually almost starts shivering. That don't actually happen to me today. That actually happened to me all throughout the day today. So, my good friend Vinny Castellano, welcome. Good to see you, Vinny. Always a pleasure to have you here. Austin City Limits is Tom. What's your prediction on the jobs report for July? So I think we get that out tomorrow, right? I think it may come in light. I think the jobs report may come in light, and I think that ties in well to the topic of conversation on tonight's stream, which is that I believe inflation has probably peaked. I believe inflation has probably peaked. Now, what do you guys think in the chat? You know, oftentimes we'll have these conversations, and it seems that a lot of the data can become clouded in the news. And here's what I mean by that. You know, when inflation is ramping, when rental prices are going through the roof, when commodity prices are going through the roof, when the price of gasoline is going through the roof, a lot of the times you'll see every single article or every single breaking news story will be a reporter reporting live from a gas station, and these gas stations are the gas stations that have the highest gas prices. But if we take a step back, and number one, the psychology of just trading in general and market cycles, usually when you see those type of reports, when you see inflation on the front page of the Financial Times or the front page of the Wall Street Journal, that's probably towards the end of the cycle. That's probably towards the end of the inflationary cycle. Usually when anything makes the front page of the newspaper, you can pretty much bet that the trend is probably finishing up or over. And we've been covering this on the stream for a while, and you guys know the most notable trend that ended, and we pretty much called it right here on the stream, and that was in relation to the Cathie Wood ARK Innovation ETFs. Now, if you've been reading the Behind the Street newsletter, which is going to be back up and running on Tuesday, we actually wrote an article dissecting some other articles that were put out from Investors Business Daily, from the Wall Street Journal, and the Financial Times, and one of which was actually calling for, or they were calling Cathie Wood a money tree. Literally, they were saying, oh, Cathie Wood is such a good investor, it's like she's a money tree. She's literally printing money for her firm. And usually when you see articles like that, that is what I like to call very irrational exuberance. That's probably right around the time when that trend is going to end. So I think we're seeing the same thing in a lot of these commodities. We've been tracking this. If anybody is interested, right now you could actually pull up another web page and go to Google or whatnot and type in the ticker symbol for crude oil futures, and that symbol is CL. And you'll notice that we're now well below $90. So I think as of today's trading, or the last time I checked when I jumped on the stream, I think ticker symbol CL, the futures contract for crude, was about 84 bucks. That's all the way down from about 130 in March. So things have definitely come down here, and I think it's only a matter of time before this starts showing up in the CPI numbers. Now, I know that's not the most popular thing to say, because right now everybody, every article that you read, every video that you watch is saying inflation's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse from here, and nothing is ever going to get better. I think I'm going to take the other side of that trade. If we are data dependent, prices of commodities are coming down. Oil's coming down. If we take a look at new home sales and existing home sales, that is cooling off, which I think is going to put pressure on rents. So I think it's only a matter of time before we see the CPI cool here. And I think this is why we're seeing a rotation back into the more growth names or enterprise software names. If you just go to tradingview.com, pull up a chart of any of those SaaS companies. So Datadog, CrowdStrike, Cloudflare, Atlassian. A lot of these have rallied now 60% from their lows, and I think they are in the beginning stages of building their stage one bases. So could be a good time to take a look at the depressed valuations of enterprise software. Carson says, Tom, unfortunately, I think oil has dropped due to demand destruction, and that might mean incoming recession, if not already one. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. So I think what Carson is saying is, he says, look, the inflation has hurt so many people that they're starting to penny pinch now and saying, okay, maybe I won't go out on a Friday night and drive my car to that nice restaurant. Maybe I will stay in and save some money on gas, which I think is a very rational thought. And the demand destruction argument comes from not only Carson in the chat, but many people on Wall Street that said the Federal Reserve could have potentially been tightening into a recession. So when interest rates go up, when they're unwinding their balance sheet, that puts pressure on bonds, which makes rates go up, and it sort of cools things down. And I think we've seen that just in the broader base stock market in general, right? Valuations have come down, PEs have compressed. But the good news is, if we block out all that noise and we just look at the earnings have actually been pretty good. Earnings have actually been pretty good. Hey, the one and only Mighty Bull is here. Good to see you. Says greetings, all moderators and friends from around the world. Welcome to a new day created by God. Good to see you, the Mighty Bull. Always a pleasure. Unlimited stimulus as big tech laying off could lead to a slowdown too. Agreed, unlimited stimulus. Dan Zhang says oil down is also because the crude oil inventory is up by 4.467 million barrels since last week. A.S. Murray says, hey Tom, still waiting for those walks from Wall Street polos and t-shirts to come out. Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe soon. Who knows? Who knows? The ABX girl says, be careful, Tom. 4 people hospitalized by lightning strike near the White House in D.C. Oh my God. Yeah, let's not. Yeah, that's no good. Daryl is here. Says hello, Tom, from Chicago, Illinois. Welcome, Daryl. Wendy England says yes, was on a draw. Drown out the combo. Yeah, Wendy England says Walmart is laying off 200 people at the corporate level. That is true as well. That is true as well. But a lot of the times, corporations. Oh, check this out, guys. Look at how cool this is. This is so sick. See, you never know what you're gonna get in New York. It's always something crazy. That's awesome, man. You know, one second you could be talking about crude oil, and then the next time you run into a flash mob of roller skaters. Welcome to New York City. Yeah, sunshine after rain. Wasn't that cool? That was awesome, man. Let's follow these guys for a little bit. Let's see. You know, I've noticed a big trend, a little bit off topic here, but has anybody else noticed the trend of roller skates coming back, or rollerblades? And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I think it's very unique. I think it's very cool, very fun. Ryan Royal says, I love this pure NYC energy. Agreed. Hey, photos from around New York is here, so smash the like button, folks. Good to see your photos. Always a pleasure. If you guys look straight ahead, the building all lit up in blue is the one and only One Vanderbilt building. Looking great tonight. I know, and we would have missed that if we were just 30 seconds later. Here, let's check it. Let's check him out. These guys are so cool, man. I kind of wish we brought the skateboard tonight. We could do the stream with our friends here. One of these guys or girls should create a YouTube channel and stream it. Hey, NMB045 says, Tom, don't you think the high earnings reported are more because of inflation and nothing more material than that? I think in a lot of cases, right? So NMB045 is correct in a lot of instances. You know, for example, like Walmart and some of the consumer discretionary companies are saying, even though our revenue is up, the only reason why revenue is up is not because of people buying additional products and services, but it costs more for the existing products and services that they already buy. So inflationary pressures, higher prices is definitely a factor to revenue growth for sure. Hey, Alexis Garcia is here. Hey, Alexis. Hey, Dan Zhang says maybe we also need to stream on a city bike too. Yeah, that's true. Carson says, seeing CPI forecast at 8.9 for August 10th. Are you over or under? I think I'm probably going to be right in line with that. I mean, I think it's so important now. So Carson, just think about this. Let's sort of try to conceptualize this. If you, and you guys, I don't know about your YouTube recommended page, but my YouTube recommended page, every single video is either from a local news website saying gas prices are astronomical, nobody could afford rent, inflation is out of control. It's so one-sided. And usually when you start to get news like that, just engulfed on your feed, that's usually when things or the trend is about to turn. And it's not just from a sentiment standpoint, it's from an actual data-driven standpoint too. I mean, just look at any of the futures of a lot of these commodities. They're all rolling over. Look at lumber. Do you guys remember during the pandemic when there was a big meme going around Twitter that, lumber is the new gold? Lumber's down 75% from record highs now. So I think inflation is rolling over here, and I think that's a good thing. Hey, Western Mass Dave is here. Good to see you. Steph writes, how are they getting through the New York City traffic without getting run over? I mean, it is doable. We used to do the stream on a skateboard, so it definitely is possible. Oh, I think some of these guys are filming it. Very cool. Dan Sang says, I remember lumber futures was rallying like crazy during that time. Yeah. And there was all of those memes about, you go into Home Depot and they would literally lock up the 2x4s because the price of lumber was so high. Usually, generally speaking, when you see those type of things, the trend is going to change. It's only a matter of time. It's the same thing that happened during the pandemic when everybody was staying home, trading these meme stocks, all of these nut jobs about the AM, what was that? What was the one that they were going crazy about? The AMC and the GameStop. The trend is going to change. Now a lot of those individuals are flushed out of the market. Don says BlackRock and Coinbase forming a partnership. Yeah, so that is hot off the press. I think that partnership was actually just announced like an hour ago. So that is definitely very good news. Very, very good news. NMB 045 says, so lumber is a leading indicator. A lot of the times when commodities top, that signals a new business cycle, right? And you could see this in the Institute for Supply Management PMI numbers on the manufacturing side and the services side. And that's why I always hammer to you guys on the streams that, look, you need to be looking at the PMI numbers on both the manufacturing and the service side, because that is essentially you're looking at the business cycle in real time. Wow, check this out, everybody. This is a beautiful view of the Empire State Building here. Fantastic. Hey, Mr. Fine Arts says, what's up? 4 more months till New Year's. Make moves, indeed. Happy early New Year's to everybody. Austin City Limits says, Tom, why don't you roller skate? Yeah, maybe we will one day. Yeah, Gregory's like a 9.3. I think this is better than a 9.3. I think it'll be better once we cross the street because I think we'll be out of the view of the light post here. Yeah, I think it's much better now. What do you guys think? So just as a quick recap, everybody. So the main earnings report that I was looking at today was coming out of Datadog, ticker symbol DDOG. They reported earnings after the bell with EPS or earnings per share up 144% to 24 cents a share. This time last year, so the same quarter last year, they produced, I think, what is 144% of that? About 9 cents. So extreme, monstrous growth in EPS. Revenue also jumped 74% in the quarter to $406 million amid an expanding partnership with Amazon Web Services and obviously that is the cloud computing segment of Amazon. Now, here's why I wanted to cover Datadog, because this is one of those SaaS companies, or software as a service companies, that is growing at an extreme, or I would even call it a blistering pace. So a lot of the times when we're analyzing these companies, it's very, very simple and clean cut to analyze a business like this. Really the only sort of work you have to do is understand what their customer acquisition rate is, and then what their churn rate is. Because even if a company does a good job at onboarding specific customers, well, it really does no good if the customers aren't staying and paying, right? So that is what's called the churn ratio. So Datadog has extremely, extremely low churn, virtually none at all. And if anything, when they do acquire a new customer and they onboard a new customer, what we actually see is those customers 6 months down the line actually go on to buy additional products and services, and that's something that you call land and expand. So for anybody who doesn't really know the inner workings of the way a software company works, right? And this isn't really software specific, but I think it's appropriate to talk about it now that we're talking about Datadog. There's two segments to a sales force at a software company, and that would be something that's called outside sales and something that's called inside sales. Now, outside sales would be like an account executive or an enterprise account executive that is responsible for bringing on new logos. They're called new logos. So this is a headhunter role, right? So you're not prospecting existing business or existing customers. Your job is to go out into the marketplace and sell a brand new product or service to a brand new customer, right? That would be called outside sales. And then after that, you have the inside sales team, which are responsible for, once that customer is landed, now it is their job to make sure that customer is having a good experience, make sure the software product in which you sold the customer is a good fit for their business model, and lastly, their job is to position additional products and services to expand that business. So for example, back in the day at my previous company, let's say if I sold a contract at $100,000 ARR, right? So that would be a brand new customer, brand new business that I sold, and they're paying about $100,000 a year for our services. Now the inside sales team, their job is to then nurture that customer, set maybe weekly, monthly, or quarterly calls with that customer to make sure things are going good, and then dig in a little bit deeper to see what additional products and services that our company offers that could help their business, right? So it's very possible maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, I sold that customer an ARR contract worth $100,000, and now the inside sales team has positioned more products and services, and now they're up to paying, let's say, $160,000, $125,000 ARR. So you could sort of get the concept here of how quickly revenue growth could ramp at a lot of these software companies, because the contracts they're selling are very seldom one-time purchases. Oftentimes, or more than not, they are reoccurring or software as a service products. Iris Lou is here. Good to see you. Says today's market is lower than before. Good to see you, Iris Lou. Hey, the one and only Cosmo Scary is here. Good to see you. Welcome, Cosmo. James says inside sales equals upselling. That's true. Agreed on that. Inside sales is upselling. Joan says, hello, Tom. Good to see you. Good to see you too, Joan. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here. Beverly County Real Estate says, wait a minute, lumber is down because demand for new construction is way down. Demand is down because of inflation and higher interest rates. That is not posited by any analysis. Yeah, so that's correct. So I don't think we're saying it's good. But if the argument that people think that inflation is going to get a lot worse, I think it's actually going to come down. And I think what you just described is demand destruction, right? And that is what Carson has been talking about. That is what Carson has been talking about, and I think that's what we've been talking about on the streams as well. There's another fund manager that goes by the name of Dan Tapiero. And that is essentially his argument as well, is that the Fed is getting in here and doing way too much. So as they're raising interest rates 75 basis points at a clip, as they are unwinding their balance sheet, right? So essentially letting mortgage-backed securities and U.S. Treasuries roll off the balance sheet, or we could call that quantitative tightening, that is causing demand destruction. And we've seen that 100% in the stock market with valuations coming crumbling down, right? If you just look at a lot of these enterprise software companies, ever since January, their PEs have been so compressed. And, you know, again, plays into what you're saying, demand destruction. We actually heard out of Toll Brothers, they said exactly what you said. They're like, contracts are falling. Hold on, I gotta get away from this lady. I think it's gonna copyright the music. But a lot of new home builders are saying that sales are easing or contracts are falling out at a higher rate than usual, obviously because interest rates are going up. I mean, you think about it, interest rates are up 100% year over year, but I guess the good news is actually that 30-year mortgage rate actually did come down, right? So the 30-year mortgage is very, very tied, essentially moves in lockstep to that US 10-year Treasury yield. And that's why oftentimes on the stream we'll say, hey, if you want to know where the stock market is going to go, quit looking at the stock market and focus on the bond market. Because in and of itself, the stock market is a derivative of the bond market, right? The stock market derives its value from the bond market. Oh. That's not good. I don't know what's going on there. J.A. is here, says, hey, my friend, how are you? Hey, we're doing good. Good to see you, J.A. I'm trying to figure out how I can avoid this guy. Yeah, let's just wait till this guy cruises on along. All right. Yeah, Don Smith says sounds like PCP. Ice says, oh crap, the crazies are out. Hey, J.A. says saludos from Salvador. Brevard County Real Estate says Toll Bros is a bad example. D.R. Horton and Lennar are the ones to look at, first time and move up buyers. That's a good point. So Toll Brothers really tends to deal with the upper echelon, right? So I would say homes priced at what, like $500,000 plus? That's a good point. I'm just trying to keep my eye on that guy. I want to make sure we're not going to bump into him. Hey, nice. Brevard County Real Estate says I sold new construction for years. So what do you think that, so I guess I'll ask you this. Where do you think the trajectory of rates are going? Do you think rates are going to turn around and go back up? Or do you think we've seen peak rates and they're actually going to come back down? What do you think? Do you think the Fed is going to continue to raise? Or do you think the Fed is going to sort of essentially, let's say if the CPI numbers come out, and the number one thing we have to look at is obviously the core inflation, right? Which excludes the volatile food and energy. If we see some deceleration there, well, maybe the Fed will back off. But if anybody watched Face the Nation, so I think on July 31st, Face the Nation came on, and Neil Kashkari came on Face the Nation and essentially said that every single metric that we look at and all the new economic data that's coming out is actually worse than we expect, which is not good. So his verbiage to me came off as very hawkish. So a little bit in contrast with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Don Smith says, I think Goldman wants to sell me Bitcoin. Brevard County real estate's economies are all about consumer confidence, 6.25%. Yeah, and it seems like, well, I think we're going to get the new University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index out, and consumer sentiment is now even through the floor, even worse than it was in 2008. Carson says, I think they keep raising. They have said they've wanted several months of lower inflation and will keep raising even if it's not the right thing to do. Interesting. Interesting. I think the right thing to do, if we talk about the right thing to do, I think you guys know my take. I think the right thing to do is to continue to raise interest rates. Because unfortunately, pretty much after the great 2008 financial crisis, we've been living in this environment where everything is predicated on cheap money, artificially low interest rates, and quantitative easing. And obviously, I work in tech sales, software sales, and a lot of these software companies have benefited a great deal from monetary policy of the last decade, right? Lower interest rates allow companies to take on debt at extremely, extremely cheap rates, pretty much free money, to hire new employees, to grow staff, and it actually will allow them to operate a business that's not profitable for a very long time because they can continue to acquire debt to service their existing debt. So I think if you want to get back to core fundamentals of a business, to say, hey, if you want to be an entrepreneur and start a company, you need to be profitable, right? You need to be profitable. So that's sort of my 2 cents, but there would be a lot of people that would disagree with me. I think our economy is way too dependent on the Federal Reserve, on cheap money. It's sort of like doing heroin, right? If you're a heroin addict, it's very hard to kick that habit, and I think easy money and quantitative easing is the economy's drug of choice. Hey, Irish is here. Says, fancy meeting you again. Good to see you. Who Dat Dave says, I think lower fuel costs acts as a relief and will lessen the amount of interest rate hikes by the Fed to curb inflation, says Who Dat Dave. Penelope says, you have a good foundation of thinking, Tom. Good to see you, Penelope, joining us from Tennessee. Always a pleasure to have you here. Sweet country living in Michigan. This is my favorite evening YouTube channel. Well, thank you for being here. Hopefully you had a fantastic day. Brevard County Real Estate says, enjoy your stream, although we differ on many policy issues. Yeah, and I think that's fine. And I think that's actually a very good thing, right? I think it'd be quite boring if, the whole stream was just about confirmation bias. So I love different ideas and opinions here. And look, at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons, here's the best value that I get out of the stream, everybody. You guys know I'm very open about my age. I'm 27 years old, but the stream allows me to connect with a lot of people that have 10, 20 years more experience than I have. Right, so each night, as we're talking about different financial topics, I get to pick everybody's brain who's been doing this and who's been living and running businesses, investing longer than I have. So you'd be surprised at some of the emails I get. I read every one of them. I try to reply to all of them, but I think it's fantastic. If you're around people that you agree with all the time, I think you can develop a pretty hard cognitive bias there. Hey, retired in Florida is here. This is for the typical New Yorker who lives in the boroughs. Brevard County Real Estate says, many years ago, I worked for a very wealthy investor and developer. His thing about stocks was, do they make any money? So you were right about that. Yeah, I think it's all been about, I don't know if it was Warren Buffett who said it. I'm trying to think of who the investor said it, but he's like EBITDA is just another name for BS. I can't curse on the stream, but BS earnings, right? So all this adjusted EPS and EBITDA, is just another way of saying, BS earnings. But so to pivot here a little bit, I've been getting a lot of, I think we'll walk back. I think we'll walk up Fifth Avenue tonight. I think it's going to be interesting. Or maybe we'll walk over to 34th Street, Herald Square. I've been getting a lot of emails about people reaching out saying, hey, I'm at this particular job. I'm trying to make a pivot to a different industry. I want to make more money or whatnot. And I think, here's what I think. You really have to understand that the closer you are, generally speaking, to revenue generating position at a company, the more money or the more opportunity you have to make more money, right? This is just generally speaking. So I know not everybody wants to be a sales guy or a girl, right? I know that not everybody wants to be, front office as opposed to back end. But if you're in a position at a company like compliance or in human resources as opposed to, let's say, a front-end salesperson, it's going to be very hard to have the opportunity to make comparable amounts of money. So I think just number one, we need to be a little bit realistic there, right? And I'm not saying which role is better. It's sort of, you got to do what you like to do. But at the end of the day, a lot of the times we talk about, investment banking, right? Either, let's say if you work in mergers and acquisitions at the investment bank, let's say you work in sales and trading. Those particular roles tend to have a higher income at the investment bank as opposed to somebody who's in compliance, who's in audit, who's in back office. It's the same thing as if you work at a software company, right? Let's say you're an enterprise account executive at Datadog selling $100,000 to $1 million contracts into the Fortune 500 and Fortune 50. Well, you're probably going to be making more than, the data scientists there, right? Generally speaking. So I think what I would say is you really have to come to terms with, are you comfortable being close to revenue? Are you comfortable pivoting your role at an organization in general? And so I think it ties very well or very nicely into Datadog's earnings, because you guys know the number one thing I like to look for when a software company or a SaaS company is reporting earnings is their customer acquisitions that pay more than $100,000 ARR, annual recurring revenue. Because these tend to be more enterprise customers, right? These tends to be larger businesses. So let's say if you want to be an account executive or enterprise account executive, you should pay close attention to these companies that are reporting earnings, because you could say, okay, I was on the Datadog call, and this quarter we found out that Datadog now has 216 customers paying an ARR of $1 million or more. That is up from just 11 customers in 2017. So what you should do is you should not only join these earnings calls from an investment standpoint, but from an employment prospect standpoint, right? So if you want to get a good job and have the opportunity to make a lot of money, well then look for a company that's growing within the segments that you want to work at. So if you want to be in SMB sales, well then check out their earnings numbers there. So could you imagine this quarter, imagine the enterprise account executives or the strategic account executives at Datadog that closed 216 deals with $1 million contract value. Their commission checks are probably looking pretty nice, right? So for the people that email me and sort of we go back and forth, I think my biggest response is, how comfortable are you with changing career paths to being more close to the revenue? Now, I wouldn't do it if that's not what you like to do. Maybe you want to be in compliance. Maybe you want to be in human resources. Maybe that's your passion. And I think that's fine, but I think you just need to come to terms with the expectations of salaries and total OT comp at those type of organizations, if that makes sense. Hey, photos from around New York. Good to see you. Wow. So Brevard County Real Estate says he was a great man. He was a Justice Department lawyer from Manhattan. He was also a partner / owner of the Essex House. Wow. The Essex House is an absolutely beautiful hotel right at Central Park South, 59th Street. Love the Essex House. AT4 Nerds makes perfect sense. Mike C says, do you have to be big financial media or an analyst to ask questions on the earnings calls? I think most times, but I think one time on the Tesla earnings call, Elon Musk took questions from, I think, YouTube, which was kind of funny. Yeah, AT4 Nerds has got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah, I think it's just about having realistic expectations, right? And knowing if you're in the right vertical or not. So check out this beautiful view of the Empire State Building here from Herald Square, 34th Street, Herald Square. Hey, Gregory says, I have an interview on Monday for I lost the comment. DS position, I get to nerd out about statistics. Well, good luck, Gregory, on your interview, man. Hopefully it goes well. I'm sure it will. Who Dat Dave says, negotiating vendor contracts, pricing, and rebates is also a revenue generating stream for many corporations. I did that for years, says Who Dat Dave. Yeah, exactly. Love that, Dave. Hey, XOXX Bob is here. Welcome, Robert. Welcome, Robert. Good to see you. Marjorie Graham says, Tom, were you on the Dutch Brothers earnings call today? I wasn't, just because there was so many companies reporting. So I actually, I wasn't on them live, but I listened in on Datadog's earnings report. I listened in on Atlassian's earnings report, which is an enterprise software company out of Australia, which was fantastic. But how was it? How did they report? Did they report good or bad? Jared Covey says Fortinet was down 16% today, says Jared Covey. Did they have earnings today? I don't know. I gotta look. NMB 045 says, I'm an accounting, Tom, and I've always been super aware of the salary limitations compared to front office, but my personality is very analytical. Yeah, so exactly what NMB 045 is saying, right? And I sort of don't want to come off as to say, you'll never make a lot of money like that. You can have a great career, make a lot of money doing what you're doing, but I think it's good, as NMB 045 said, just to have a little bit of realistic expectations is all. I think that's fantastic. Marjorie says you missed it. You missed the earnings report? I think it may start to rain here in a minute. Yeah, so just to quickly review, Datadog reported earnings. Earnings per share is up about 144% to 24 cents from 9 cents the prior year. Revenue has jumped 74% to $406 million. This quarter they closed a pretty big partnership, a pretty big deal with Amazon Web Services. Obviously, whenever we talk about the big cloud computing giants, we always have Amazon, Microsoft's Azure platform, and Google's Google Cloud in those topics of conversation. Photos from around New York says futures are all up for the indices. AT4 Nerds says, man, did a software RFP for our vendor management team, and oh my God, it was so fun. I wish I could do that as a career. Yeah, AT4 Nerd, we've been talking a little bit back and forth on IG there. I'd love to catch up further. Probably when I get on the train, I'll catch up with you as well. Penelope says, you're right, Tom. I hold my tongue here. This is great learning experience. So one of the other things I was thinking about, and let me know what you guys think. Hey, David Randall is here. Says, hello, friend. Indeed, diversity in your portfolio. Good to see you, David. Welcome. One of the things I was thinking about today, I don't even know why I was thinking about it, but I was thinking about, obviously on the stream we always talk about those big enterprise software companies investing in tech. But think about this, and what do you guys think about sort of my thesis here? There's going to be a record number of people retiring over the next 5 years. Obviously, the baby boomers and the like. And a lot of those people own small businesses, right? They own small to medium-sized businesses. I think that's pretty obvious to say. But I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. It may have been the Wall Street Journal or Barron's, that said the record amount of people retiring that own and operate a small business is growing to record levels. But here's the thing. Oftentimes, what would happen when somebody would retire from a SMB, small to medium-sized business, they would give it to their kids to run. But what they're figuring out is a lot of the kids now, they just want to do their own thing. They want their own careers. They want to go into tech. They want to go into, more exciting businesses than, I'm using boring not as a term to be mean or hate on those businesses, but what I mean boring businesses, I mean a contracting business, like an electrical contractor, a mom and pop HVAC company. Maybe you own a laundromat or a cleaners. So there's probably hundreds or maybe even hundreds of thousands of small businesses that are extremely profitable. I mean, a 4 to 5 person HVAC company is probably doing, well over $2 million in revenue. And their profit is probably around $600,000 to $700,000 a year, maybe more. And when those people retire, oftentimes their kids are not going to want to take over the business. So I think there's going to be a big opportunity here for the average person, if you even want, go knock on a door of a local small to medium-sized business and maybe make them an offer, get to know their business, because at the end of the day, the number one, I would say the hardest thing about getting started in business is actually building your book of business, right? Which means building your customers. So essentially, if you buy these businesses, you would be inheriting decades of customer growth, customer acquisition. So I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about, imagine all the companies on Long Island, all the companies in the Northeast that are maybe a 7 to 10 or maybe even a 50-person shop, where these people are going to be retiring, and there's probably a pretty good percentage of those founders that the children are not going to want to take over the business. There's probably going to be one or two things that happen. Number one, they're probably just going to close up shop and retire. Or number two, they're going to get cannibalized by extremely, extremely large competitors, right? So it's going to be one of those two things. So I think there's probably going to be a window for a very niche venture capital or very niche investment firms to actually just buy small mom and pop shop businesses that are already profitable from people that are nearing retirement. So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about that? Any thoughts on that? I'm curious. Who Dat Dave says, Tom, that has been a major issue in the swimming pool business. Children do not want to take over the family business, especially in the Northeast. Yeah, that's what I've been seeing here. It's interesting. Mike Cease is sad to think of a successful small business dying because no one wants to take it over. Wendy England says, you live in a small business? Yeah, but who Dat Dave, I think that's a really good point. I think that's a really good point. Hey, Anthony Cap is here. Says, good evening, Tom and everybody. Welcome. Penelope says, interesting bailouts and takeovers. Jared Covey says, might lose loyal customers when ownership changes. That's a possibility. That's true. But those, I would feel like, as you're negotiating that deal, it would probably be a clean handoff, right? Because think about the customer experience if the business just shuts down and stops operation altogether. Well, now the customer has no service, right? But if somebody comes in there and takes over, maybe you could even increase the operational efficiencies of that business, because Early on in my sales career, I remember one of the first deals I ever closed. It was actually a pest management business. And come to think about it, when I was dealing with the owner was quite old. The owner was right about, I'd say probably early 60s, late 60s. Early 70s, late 70s. And I'm saying old is to be running a business. And imagine how profitable that company probably is. It's probably more profitable than you'd expect. So I think there's a pretty good opportunity here to maybe go to these existing businesses, and you could probably even increase the operational efficiencies. But check out this bar here. This is a pretty cool rooftop bar overlooking Madison Square Garden. So here's one of the ways I think you could probably increase the operational efficiencies of that business. They probably do everything with pen and paper. All of their customers are probably filed away in physical paper, like filing cabinets and things like that. Imagine if you went in there and just deployed a basic CRM tool, right? A customer relationship management tool where you turn that data into electronic data. Well, now you could send out automated email campaigns, right? Now you could do outbound prospecting. And I'm probably pretty sure that you could stir up additional business. So let's say if the company's earnings was $600,000 and they don't have any technology within the business now, you can probably increase their operations probably by 100% within the next 10 years. Just by doing outbound prospecting, staying in touch with the customers, hiring a sales team and doing upsells. So I think that's probably going to be an interesting part of the business. Yeah, Jared Covey says that is so true. Good point. Yeah, Jared, I could tell stories for days about very early on in my sales career, going to small and medium-sized businesses on Long Island and walking in and literally meeting with the CEO of the company, and they have stacks of paperwork and they're all discolored, they're like yellow on the desk. A lot of SMB companies have not made the switch to the cloud yet. Wow, check out all these rats here. Dang. It's almost like the ground is moving, there's so many rats. David Randall says, I have seen several mom and pop takeovers that have been successful, says David. Carson says, just saw a headline that Democrats added a share buyback tax to the budget bill. Thoughts on that? That's interesting. Hey, Miss Brown Eyes, thank you so much for the $2 donation. You are way too kind. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I think the government is really, so we'll talk about share buybacks for a minute. So generally speaking, there's two ways to return value to shareholders, right? The two main ways. And the number one reason I think we could all agree is dividend payments, right? So a company could issue a dividend. Well, the Empire State Building's looking fantastic tonight. If you guys are enjoying the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We usually do these live streams about 5 days a week. But those are generally the main two ways that companies or businesses return value to shareholders. Number one, through share buybacks, and number two, through dividends. But as of the last, I'd say maybe 10 years, businesses have really been shifting to distributing more value to shareholders via share buybacks. Now, why might that be? Why might that be? Well, dividends are a taxable event. So if a company pays a dividend and it hits your brokerage account, you have to pay taxes on that, right? Assuming it's not in a retirement account like an IRA or a Roth IRA, you got to pay taxes on that immediately. So that's a taxable event. But with share buybacks, there's no taxable event there. Essentially, they take dollars or money from the balance sheet and they just buy back their own stock with it. And what this does is this in turn reduces the EPS or earnings per share. This increases the earnings per share or EPS because it's taking supply of shares off the market. Does that make sense? So let's say if Apple issues a share buyback program and they buy back $2 billion worth of stock, well, that's going to reduce the overall amount of shares that are available on the open market, thus increasing the earnings per share. And as we talk about all the time on the streams, as you increase EPS, usually stock prices will follow, right? How much are you getting paid per dollar or per share that you own? Hey, these are the skaters again. Nice. I wonder if there's like a formal meetup. This is awesome here. Don Smith, the CEO, wants to get paid. Buybacks are a joke. So I think what the government has caught on throughout the years is they're like, okay, if you don't want to issue dividends, we want our tax money. We caught on to your little scheme of just buying back your stock. Now we're going to tax that. So I doubt that's ever going to go through. I guess we'll have to find out and see. Hey, UnitJ22 says hello, Tom and chat. Welcome. Good to see you. Disney Matt says, Tom, what should you do before buying a stock? What kind of research? Well, I think the number one thing you should do is look at the earnings, because earnings trump all. Earnings matter. So if a company is not compounding out their annualized growth rate, at least 25% plus per annum, I think you should probably stay away. Because if you research past earnings or past stock market performers, if you research the stocks that have done the best, those are companies that have compounded out their earnings quite drastically over time. So the criteria that I generally look at, and this is really attributed to sort of a can slim investing style that was made famous by William J. O'Neill. Earnings, earnings, earnings. So look for the company's EPS to be growing at least 25% plus per annum or quarter over quarter. Look at revenue growth to be about 25% plus quarter over quarter. Make sure they have fantastic pre-tax and after-tax profit margins. And then lastly, very high return on equity. I think Microsoft has a 40% or 45% return on equity or ROE. Disney Matt says, is it smart to just buy shares in companies you know? Or should you invest in companies you know nothing about? I mean, obviously you shouldn't invest in a company you know nothing about. If you don't really want to do much research, I think you should just buy index funds. So very low cost index funds that either track the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or something like that. Hey, Bagels and Walks says, do you have your board, Tom? Not today. We don't have the board today, unfortunately. Wendy England says, you got to make sure those shares aren't overvalued to begin with. That's true. So here we are looking at the beautiful Moynihan train station. We are here at 31st Street and 8th Avenue. Hey, E. Monica B says, hey, Tom, good to see you, Monica. Welcome. Silva Inc. YT says, wow, I haven't seen people on skates in a while. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it's a new emerging trend. People on roller skates or rollerblades, right? It's kind of cool that they have these meetups here, though. But yeah, Carson, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. I didn't know that they're trying to go after share buybacks now. You know, usually the finance industry will try to get creative, and sooner or later the tax man's going to come knocking on your door and demanding the tax money. So I think it was only a matter of time. But yeah, share buybacks, I mean, I think Apple, pretty much all the major Fortune 500 companies, they buy back massive amounts of their stock. And this actually turned into a pretty big problem during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially when relating to the airlines, right? Especially when it relates to the airlines. Because what happened to the airlines during COVID? Well, they had to be bailed out. And Main Street was really upset about that, because if you look at the activity of those airlines over the past 5 years, they were using tons of money from their balance sheet to buy back their own stock, right? So instead of saving their money for a rainy day, what they did is they bought back a ton of their stock, and then when business got bad, they said, oh, the government has to save us, the government has to come in and save the day. So Disney Matt says airfare prices are insane right now. That they are. I think I've been paying like 100 or 200% more on my flight tickets, especially from New York to Miami, vice versa. Carson says they've been going after the oil companies for buybacks and not expanding on production too. Well, I mean, the problem with the oil companies, and I don't want to sound like I'm coming to defense of the oil companies, but the reason why they raked in just unbelievable profits, I think if we think about ExxonMobil, if we think about Shell, and Chevron, I think in Q2 alone, their combined profit was like $46 billion. Just for the quarter, it was insane. But the main reason for that was because of refining margins went through the roof. Because during COVID, I think there was about 3 million barrels per day in terms of refining capacity taken off of the market. So as demand recovered and everybody wanted to travel, everybody wanted to go back out, the oil companies could not keep up with the demand of refining all this. So the margins on the oil that they could refine went to Mars, went to the moon. Yeah, Gregory's like that guy was waving. Bob says Shell made $12.5 billion last quarter. It's insane. Yeah, I think collectively those three raked in almost $48 billion. I mean, think about that. That's insane. Who Dat Dave says, however, last time I looked, ExxonMobil's percentage was around 8 or 9%. Yeah, Bagels and Walks says higher prices and added delays and uncertainty. An interesting combo. Yeah, I think I told you guys that almost every single one of my flights this year was either delayed, canceled, or we had some sort of mechanical problem on the flight, which was insane. So here we are on the corner of 8th Avenue. Again, we have a beautiful view of the Empire State Building here. Hey, Michelle K is joining us. Says good evening, Tom and everybody. Welcome, Michelle. Hopefully you are doing good. FredX is here. Good to see you, FredX. So this, I believe, is the New Yorker Hotel. I think about 50% of this hotel now is actually allocated towards dormitories for CUNY students. So like the City University of New York, and obviously you have the very famous TikTok diner here at the bottom. Hey, Lockjaw is here. Good to see you. This is good evening, Tom. Welcome, Lockjaw. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining in the chat tonight. Dolly Girl Twin says, hey, everybody. Carson says not to get political, but the government wants them to invest in themselves while at the same time trying to get entirely electric. Yeah, I mean, I think that the CEO of ExxonMobil put out a statement saying it's very hard for us to invest in our future, invest in infrastructure, if the government is signaling that we have to turn down all of our production and putting limitations and new rules and regulations. So I think it's definitely a good point. It's definitely a good point. You definitely make a good point there. Yeah, so why would they invest into new production methods if the verbiage from the federal government states that all of this ESG stuff, and I think we could argue back and forth about the validity of ESG, which is environmental social governance, but it's a good point. It's definitely a good point. Hey, DJ A. Rose here, welcome. This is having the toughest time finding flights from Atlanta to Seattle next month. Wow. Well, Atlanta is definitely a booming place. But just to give you guys an idea, so during the pandemic, I used to spend about $50 to $60 on flight tickets from Fort Lauderdale, from Miami International to LaGuardia, JFK. You know, you get the picture. Now they're like $160, $200. So I think consumers are seeing price pressures everywhere, and even with those increased costs, I think Delta lost money last quarter, and they're suffering with the shortage of airline pilots. NMB 045 says, I bike up this path several times when I'm in New York City. The city bikes are so convenient. How much are the city bikes, by the way? I think a yearly pass to the city bikes are what, $160? Maybe a little less. Wow, photos from around New York is like I haven't been on an airplane in years. Jeez. Dolly Girl Twins says Walmart layoffs, corporate workers after cutting their Q2 outlook. Yeah, it seems like businesses are sort of front-running this downturn, right? It seems like a lot of these businesses are front-running the downturn, as they're saying, okay, now that we have 2 quarters of economic contraction or GDP contraction, we're going to trim when necessary. And I think a lot of this stuff is normal, right? And again, we've been talking about this on the stream, that oftentimes it seems as if the average American has been conditioned that a recession is like the boogeyman and that the recession is this big, bad, evil thing. When in actuality, if we think about long-term sustained economic prosperity, you need recessions, you need contractions to flush out the irrational exuberance, the excess, the businesses who aren't profitable, right? And when that happens, it's not like these businesses go bust and go bankrupt. Oftentimes they get bought out in a takeover bid, right? You know, maybe an investor will come in, they'll scoop up these businesses, they'll buy these businesses, and they'll increase their operations. But if it's only allowed to have economic prosperity and cheap, easy money all the time, that forces people to get very, very comfortable. And that's not good at all. Because when people are very comfortable, especially at the C-suite in particular companies, they can get very lackadaisical and they're not motivated to fix inefficiencies of the business or drive profitability. You know, they would just want to sit on their big 6-figure cushy corporate salary and not do anything. So I think economic downturns are necessary for long-term sustained success. But that's sort of my 2 cents about that. Hey, British Gray says, hey Tom, the city bike is $150 per year for the bikes. That's a deal. That's a steal right there. Wow, think about that, $150 a year. You know, but then again, it's not always nice in New York. You know, in the winter, you're gonna have to be going up against sub-zero temperatures riding your bike. So I think it's probably still worth it. Yeah, Monica B's like, Tom, watch for rats. I definitely will. James says Walmart is laying off people. Oracle, Robinhood, it's catching the flu. Layoffs are catching on. So James, that's a prime example. Robinhood should be laying off workers. But you guys know I'm not a big fan of the business model of Robinhood anyway. I think they are a legal dope dealer on Wall Street. Definitely not a good business there. Jared Covies is paying more for a flight and getting a worse experience. Yeah, exactly. So prices are going up, but you're getting a worse experience. During the pandemic, not for nothing, my flying experience was fantastic. Well, that was because, nobody was flying. But my flying experience was fantastic during the pandemic. Dolly Girl Twins says never get comfortable at any job. I second that. Dolly Girl Twins. Hey, Chris Beeman is here. Says hello, my dear Tom. Welcome. Lockjaw is here. Says hey, Tom. I don't know if this subject matter has brought to your attention, but what do you think about the outbreak in monkeypox? I usually don't think about the outbreak in monkeypox, just to be quite honest with you. Not to sound like sort of brash about the subject, but I just ignore it. And that's just me. I got to block out all the noise, because the media is going to be the next thing, and that's going to be the next virus, and then it's going to be the next one. The only thing I could do is just do the best I can, be safe, and I don't want to think about any of that stuff. Yeah, who dat Dave says shrinkflation also. Yeah, it seems as if portion sizes too at restaurants are even getting smaller. Has anybody noticed that? I've actually been trying to cut back a little bit on eating out. But I've been noticing at some of the restaurants that I oftentimes frequent, a lot of the portion sizes are actually getting really, really small, or smaller. And I think that's a way for restaurants to maybe increase some of their profit margins, because the restaurant business is usually not as profitable as you would think. Hey, James is here. Says I've learned to take my job one day at a time. I don't plan on still having a job next week, because you never know. Just get through each day. That works for me. That's an interesting way to look at it. So I think a good way to look at it is, if you can make yourself irreplaceable at a job, you'll probably never get fired. And I think it may be a little bit easier to say those things if you're in like a revenue generating role, like a sales role. Because if you're the top sales guy at a company, chances are you're probably going to keep your job forever, even if the company is going through some hard times. Because if the company is going through some hard times, why would they fire their top sales guy that's bringing in all the revenue? So I think if you want irresistible, maybe not irresistible, but padlock job security, I think a good way to do that is to become so efficient at your job and so good at your job that you become irreplaceable. That's what I've tried to do over the years as well. Oh, this guy has a really nice longboard, everybody. Oh, in other news, let's talk about some pizza news here for a minute. So Joe's Pizza, we're actually about to run into Joe's Pizza up here. I think our viewer Shot by Scott told me that Joe's Pizza is moving to Miami, Florida. So they are going to open up a location in Wynwood. So the Wynwood area of Miami, Florida. So who knows, maybe when we're back in Miami, we'll have to do a stream outside of Joe's and see which pizza place is better. The Joe's here or the Joe's in Miami. We'll see. But I was so surprised when I saw that. I was like, I can't believe Joe's is actually going to Florida. Don Smith says, I love pizza news. Yeah, we're probably going to have to incorporate a pizza segment on the stream. Mike C says, for the remainder of the broadcast, drink every time shrinkflation is mentioned. Hilarious. Hey, D Hot is here. Welcome, D Hot. Welcome. Hope you're doing good. So we're walking up Broadway here. We're headed towards 42nd Street. But here's the good news. I think we're going to be able to get to Bryant Park tonight before it's closed. We'll be able to take a quick lap, a quick walk around Bryant Park. one of my favorite locations in the city. Hey, David C. Randall says, does not exist in sales either, especially when the company is sold. It happened to me twice. So in those nuances, you're right. Unfortunately, you're correct. Especially if you're the acquisition target too. So let's say you work at a company, to David's point, and you're the top sales guy, you're the top dog at the company, but your company is a takeover target. Usually the employees who get laid off or cut during M&A is the acquirer, or is the company being acquired. Usually the company that's buying the other company is fine, but the employees that are being bought, those are the ones that tend to not survive the merger, unfortunately. So that is a good point. Hey, Patricia Ivory says, Wendy, England, or Wendy, 9 million people are not going to Florida. Dan Zhang says, are there a lot of bubble tea places in Miami just like New York City? Not really, actually. Not really at all, to be honest. There's a couple. There's like a couple. Hey, the investigator says, Walks from Wall Street, did you hear Walmart started layoffs at the corporate level? I did. We were talking about that a little bit. We did cover that. Essentially, the biggest takeaway the investigator I had in Walmart's earnings report, the biggest takeaway that I had personally is that consumers are shifting their spending from the main name brand products to like the store brand to save some money, right? So I think Walmart is noticing those trends and are trying to get ahead of the economic downturn, right? And usually, sometimes corporations will overcorrect on that. So they'll do too much and lay off too many people than that are actually needed. But we'll definitely keep our eye out on it and watch it. Hey, Points Traveler is here. Welcome, Points Traveler. Good to see you. Yeah, AT4 nerds says, don't come to Florida, no vacancy. Hey, Marcelo, what's up? Hey, Tom, hoping you're well. A lot of homeless in the New York streets comparing to last year. What's happened? I don't think that's exclusive to New York, but I think you're right. But it's definitely not exclusive to New York City. I think you're seeing homelessness spike up across the United States. Not for nothing. When I traveled to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for work, I saw the same thing. I saw the same thing, a lot of homelessness, unfortunately. Yeah, so Mike's talking about the Kirkland brand. So Mike says Kirkland is good. I think you can get them at Costco, I think. Good to see you, Marcelo. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. So Marcelo, we will be heading up to the UBS building. I know Marcelo's daughter works at UBS, so we will head up there. And check it out. James, so Kirkland brand is at Costco. Okay. Here, let me see if I could adjust my brightness here on the stream. Let me know if you guys see the brightness. Let me know if the camera quality is out of focus. I've been having some issues with this here, but I think we may be good now. I think we may be good now. Everybody, in other news, breaking news right at the market close. So BlackRock will be partnering with Coinbase to allow their institutional investors to get access as an onboarding platform to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And this is actually very, very good news. This is very good news because we've been talking about this on the stream, and I said, if you really want people to take Bitcoin seriously as an asset class, you're going to need on-ramps. You're going to need institutional on-ramps to buy these products. That's just what's going to be needed. And I think if you have a big name like BlackRock getting in here, and obviously BlackRock is the biggest money manager by assets, them having the ability to offer their clients exposure or even custody of their Bitcoin is a huge step forward. Now, I think there's two parts to this, and we've been talking about this for a while, but I think the second part of that is not only the institutions to get involved for adoption and price stability, but number two, I think there needs to be more and increasing regulation, especially when it comes to the SEC, because if there's no true guidelines on if asset allocators can buy this, if pension funds can buy it, if sovereign wealth funds can buy it, well then I think it's very, very difficult to think that you're going to have the big institutions, being able to put an allocation towards it. So I think we have step number one, right? We're already seeing Fidelity get involved in this space. And I think number two, obviously after today we saw BlackRock getting involved, partnering with Coinbase. Liminal says Wall Street is utterly clueless about cryptocurrencies and decentralized consensus, in my opinion. Maybe you're right. Dan Zhang, oh no, you can go. We're just, yeah. Dan Zhang says, have you talked about Michael Saylor resigned as CEO? Yeah, I saw that too. So Saylor did resign, and I think he gave a crazy reason too. He says, I just want to focus on my Bitcoin investments. So he's going to step down as CEO to do that. I mean, I'm not sure how much time you need to do that. I think it's a coincidence after taking such a big bath as he took on that investment to then go ahead and step down. So I think there's definitely a correlation there between Saylor stepping down and potentially a poor-timed investment. Now, I agree with corporations adding a little bit of allocation on the balance sheet, but if you borrow money and lever up and issue debt to then acquire it, I think that's pretty much a sign of the times, and a sign of the times, especially before January when the oh, look at that rat, when the market started to tumble. Hey, SME Media is here. Good to see you, SME Media. Yeah, check this out. Beautiful view here of the Empire State Building. Don Smith says Saylor has the lunatic tattoo. I think that's somebody else that you're thinking about. I think you're thinking about Michael Novogratz. I think Michael Novogratz is the person you're thinking about there. But SME Media, good to see you. We are in Bryant Park, right next to the Steven Schwarzman building, overlooking the beautiful Empire State Building here. Lennox is here, says gorgeous, good to see you. FredX, welcome. Yeah, I think this is probably like a 9-7 view of the Empire. Liminal says not your keys, not your Bitcoin. I agree with that. Yeah, let me try to wipe the lens. Let me see if that'll fix it. Hey, Ren 1018 is here. This is Tom. What's up, brother? Good to see you, Ren 1018. We're hanging out here in Midtown Manhattan. Always a pleasure. But man, is it humid out today. And I think it's going to be a little bit worse tomorrow. I think today got up to about 92, maybe 93 degrees. And 92 to 93 degrees isn't bad. The thing that's bad is the crazy amount of humidity. It's almost as bad as like southern Florida type humidity too. Hey, Two Harbors, this is Tom. New York really has to do something about the rat problem. It's totally embarrassing, especially near high-end restaurants, definitely not good. I agree. I definitely agree. I would say I've probably seen about, it's a lot more rats than normal. But I really don't know what we could do about it. I mean, they put down the rat poison, right? I mean, they must. Every time I take the subway, which is usually not that often, but every time I take the subway, I always see, the signs that say, oh, please beware of the rat poison. Please beware of the, the traps or the baits. I just think it's because it's such a concentrated number of people that live in Manhattan, and we essentially pile the garbage on top of one another in the streets. So I think it's going to be virtually impossible to get rid of the rats, unfortunately. But I guess we'll have to see. Mike C says, Tom, you need to retell the story about the rats and the food carts. All right, we will. I will retell it. So I used to, so during my college soccer days, we used to practice on the west side of Manhattan at a place called DeWitt Clinton Park. So one day when we were walking back from DeWitt Clinton Park, this was late at night, we had a night practice, we just stumbled upon the garage, one of the garages where all of those food carts, like if you walk up and down the streets of Manhattan, you'll see like the hot dog stands and things like that. You'll see a lot of the food carts and such. And we found the location where they store these food carts and where they clean them at night. And it was literally just a sea of rats crawling in and out of the carts. It was almost like the place was moving. There must have been thousands of rats with hundreds of these food vendor carts there packed in for the night. And it was just literally rats crawling all over the place. And from that day on, I told myself, I'm like, I will never ever buy anything at one of those food carts. Now, I don't really like telling that story because, I definitely want them to have business there at these food places, but I mean, at the end of the day, it was pretty gross. Let's just say that. It was no bueno. NMB045 says more biodiversity needed in New York City to control the rat problem, maybe. DJ A Rose says, do you follow an MLS team? Not usually, but if I'm going to root for somebody, I'll probably root for like the New York Red Bulls or something like that. New York Red Bulls or NYCFC. But everybody, this is the, man, look at how nice that looks. This is the One Vanderbilt building here. Looks absolutely fantastic. And it looks pretty cool amongst the clouds too. Hey, Marjorie's the same, know exactly where those garages are too. Yeah, so if you guys want to know exactly where they are, I guess I won't give the exact location, but if you're familiar with the Central Park horses, where those Central Park horses, like the stalls are, let's just say you're getting pretty close. Let's just say you're getting pretty close. But as we were talking about Datadog's earnings report, there was a key statement that the CEO made on the earnings call, which I thought was pretty telling, and I'd like to read that for all of you, if I may. They said, our pipeline for large new logos and customers are going into the second half has never been stronger. Customer churn remains low with gross revenue retention steady in the mid to high 90s. So this goes back to exactly what we've been talking about when we're trying to evaluate and try to understand if a company, especially in the enterprise software space, is worth the investment or not. And what we say is, number one, you have to look at the pipeline of deals in the funnel that are over $100,000 plus, right? So that's essentially proof of concept. If you can prove to the marketplace that big enterprises want your software, they like your software, and it works well, you're probably going to get a lot of referral business, and other companies are probably going to be asking around and adopt your software as well. So that's essentially proof of concept. Number two is the churn rate. So it's one thing to bring on a bunch of new customers, right? It's one thing to sell a big deal, but it's another thing to actually keep these customers and get them, or make them, essentially keep them from cutting their contracts, right? So if Datadog is acquiring 1,000 new customers a month, and all of those customers, about 90% of their customers, continue to stay month after month, well, that's a pretty good business model. And now we could start to model out exponential growth trends and things like that. So I was very encouraged by Datadog's earnings report. They beat on both the top and the bottom line, and they gave very, very good forward guidance too. Hey, the real boogeyman is here. Welcome, good to see you. Thank you for joining. We're walking up Fifth Avenue tonight. Hope you're well, trust you're well. Hey, Luis Garcia, this is 3 months till Thanksgiving. Welcome, good to see you. Yeah, photos from around New York says go FDNY. I agree. JP says, what's up, y'all? Good to see you, JP. Welcome. The one and only Daniel G from Buenos Aires, Argentina is here. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. So Daniel G, we were also talking about Atlassian. I know you probably use Jira, Atlassian products. So Atlassian reported a good quarter as well. I think they did beat on both the top and the bottom line too. And obviously the CEO for Atlassian, Michael Cannon-Brookes. But Atlassian is in a little bit of hot water here. Atlassian is in a little bit of hot water. And the reason for that is because they're refusing to shut, and I don't want to get too political here, but they're refusing to turn down their customers in Russia, right? So if you notice from the Datadog conference call, the Datadog earnings call, they did shut down a lot of their customers that were doing business in Russia. Atlassian is not going to do that. What they did say is that they're going to take that revenue that comes from Russia and that part of the world and donate it. But I guess I'll hold my tongue on what I think on that, but I'm just reporting the news, Get a load of this beautiful view of the Chrysler building here. Now it's exactly in between One Vanderbilt, and I think it looks amazing amongst the clouds here. Hey, DowJones.eth is here. Welcome, Dow Jones. Always a pleasure to see you. Jay Nibbs is here. Good to see you. So DowJones.eth, I guess I'll ask you, what do you think about the news coming out of BlackRock and Coinbase for tonight? Obviously, BlackRock is choosing Coinbase's institutional platform to allow their clients to onboard and even provide custodial services for Bitcoin. Now, I know Liminal in the chat, he actually brought up a really good point by saying, you know, the point of Bitcoin is to hold your own private keys, right? There's the old saying, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. But I think as you maybe get older, if you're not as tech savvy, and if you're holding large amounts, maybe you want a financial institution or a trusted provider to store your Bitcoin. I know I would never want to do that. I know definitely I would never want to do that, but at the end of the day, I think it's good news for flushing out a lot of this speculation in the space. Yeah, Don Smith says big news on Coinbase. Hey, Lil Yell 69 says, Tom, Oracle layoffs hitting really hard this week. Curious what the repercussions will be. Do we expect similar layoffs at other tech giants? Yeah, well, I think it's a good point. I think we're already getting layoffs at other tech giants. I think in Microsoft's earnings report, they actually came out and said that they spent more money last quarter on severances than any other quarter in company history. So that means they're downsizing. Has to mean they're downsizing. By how much, I don't know. But if I had to guess, it would definitely probably be a lot. But it's probably in like compliance. It's probably in like back office positions that have become a little bit bloated during the economic boom, is what I would say. Daniel G says, I've heard about Atlassian and its revenues policy, or draconian revenues policy. It's the right thing to do. Oh, donation revenues policy. Yeah, it's the right thing to do. I agree. KR says, what's your opinion on Trump buying his ex or burying his ex on a golf course to dodge taxes? I don't have any opinion on that, to be honest. I try to not get involved in any of that sort of stuff. Sort of the way I think about it is Trump is really he's no longer president, obviously, so there's no reason for me to have him on my mind. I think the media is doing a disservice, not to get political, but I think that they're doing a disservice to the Democrats' chances of being more prosperous if they keep talking about Donald Trump. It's just like, stop talking about the guy. I don't know, that's my 2 cents. He's out of the office and he's out of my mind. I mean, I could care less what he does. Dow Jones says, didn't Brian Armstrong say they could go bankrupt? Typical reason. Maybe. That's actually a really good point. So Brian Armstrong is like, oh, we probably need capital injections. Let me go partner with one of the biggest asset managers on the planet, being BlackRock. But I don't know if that's the exact reason why they did it. Maybe it's one of the reasons. But I think that BlackRock potentially could need Coinbase just as much as Coinbase needs BlackRock, if they want to be a market leader in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Because at the end of the day, I think there's one thing that we sort of get it a little bit twisted here. Whenever a big financial institution dips their toe in the water with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, it doesn't necessarily mean that institution is bullish on that particular asset. If there's demand in the marketplace, Wall Street is going to build products and services around that asset in order to drive additional management fees and revenues. Right? It's the same thing with all of these derivative products, right? Why do you think they have baskets and tranches of financial garbage that they repurpose and repackage and sell to clients? It's because there's a market for it. So at the end of the day, I don't take this as BlackRock saying, oh, we're very bullish on the space. I think it's BlackRock saying our clients have showed great interest in Bitcoin and holding other cryptocurrencies. So our job is to make money off of management fees. So we are going to give them a product because the demand is there. Does that make sense? So that's one of the ways that I'm trying to think about it and conceptualize it. I don't really like to get too excited and say, oh, that means BlackRock is going to go out and buy all the Bitcoin. No, it just means that there's demand in the marketplace for a product, and BlackRock is going to give their customers what they ask for, if that makes sense. Lily L69 says Bitcoin will never replace fiat currencies. That argument was invalid when Obama was still in office. Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that's, so the value proposition, I think I've said this to you guys before, where I see value in Bitcoin is just unconfiscatable wealth, right? So I like the appeal that I could put, let's say, 5% of my net worth in something that's truly unconfiscatable. If you have your private keys, nobody could possibly steal your Bitcoin. I don't know what this guy's doing. But if you guys are enjoying the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video. Also, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We do these live streams 5 days a week between New York City and Miami, and we'd love to have you guys a part of the show. So I don't know if they're going to do a renovation on this building, but I think this was one of the Hyatt hotels. I think this was the Hyatt Grand Central. Does anybody know if this is still open, the Hyatt Grand Central? Does anybody know? DJC says, bro, it's called praying, be sensitive. He wasn't. So I'm not socially inept. There's a lot of addicts, unfortunately. A lot of times when people are strung out, they'll do that. But yeah, I understand if some people do pray like that, but not that guy. Trust me. Robert says, Tom, if you're worried about your money being confiscated, then you must be involved in some nefarious dealings. No, not really. I think it's just watching the trajectory of the world over the past decade and seeing how people's wealth can be confiscated by governments, and it's happened. I actually wrote a piece about this in the Behind the Street newsletter. It's happened in many countries across the world where if the government goes insolvent, well, they'll just actually take money out of your bank account and say, oh, if you have a balance of over $100,000, we're going to take 50% of that because we need to bail the government out, which I think is totally wrong and horrible. But unfortunately, things like that do happen. Yeah, DowJones.eth says, especially if it's digital too. There is some theory about how there'll be, a central bank-backed digital currency. But to which I say, the vast majority of currency right now is already digital, right? I mean, out of all the money outstanding in the US economy, there's not actually physical dollars backed by it. The vast majority of it is just digits on a screen. All right, that's essentially what this Federal Reserve does, is they print money digitally, right? If anybody saw the 60 Minutes interview with Fed Chair Jerome Powell, he's like, yeah, we print money digitally. We flood the system with liquidity. So I would say money's already digital. Very seldom do I carry cash. I almost never carry cash. David says, you were right, the guy is not praying. Yeah, trust me. Sabrina Fair, good to see you. Wendy England says that's why some people want to have at least some physical gold. I think the thing that's hard about gold is just its operability and the way it can move. It's hard to, cross the border with $1 million worth of gold, right? But if I memorize my private keys, I could walk around with $1 million worth of Bitcoin in my head. Now, again, notice how I didn't say I'm bullish on it because of speculation purposes. I want it to go up in price. It would be nice if it goes up in price, but that's not the only reason. There's a big reason there's other factors than it just goes up in price. But I think all good points are being made in the chat. Two-pack is like, Bitcoin is my go-to. Razone, good to see you. Hey, Forrest. Crooked Eyes is crude oil, and UB are good futures. Yeah, so crude oil I think is now down to what, $85? Which I guess is good. It'll provide some people some relief at the pump, which I think is much needed. Yeah, Mike sees a solid argument as long as it remains a store value, maybe. Rebel Poet 71 says Biden actually did something good. He brought down oil prices. Now here's something interesting to explore. If oil prices, obviously they got up to as high as $130 a barrel, right? And now that they've come down to $84, do you think that means that the right-wing news agencies will give Biden a pat on the back and saying, oh, the reason why oil prices are down is because of Joe Biden, right? Because if their argument, and I'm not saying that the reason why oil prices are down is because of Joe Biden, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Does he get credit now that they're down? If he got credit because they're up, does he get credit on the way down? Something interesting to think about. So my theory and my thought process on the whole thing is, for a short time, the reason why oil prices were high is not necessarily Joe Biden himself, but more left-leaning administration trying to push ESG on everybody at the wrong time. Right? Now, I'm all for clean energy. I'm all for going green. I love all that. But you need to do it sustainably. And their big push into going green couldn't have happened at a worse time. Russia invasion of Ukraine. So it sort of makes the world dependent on Russian oil. As we are turning down our production, turning down our refining facilities. It just happened at a very, very terrible time. What I think we should do, and I've said this many times, is yes, we should focus on going green, but do it in a way where the infrastructure is already built out so we can make an easy transition to clean energy, as opposed to just doing a full stop, shut everything off, turn down all our nuclear, in which case we don't have a backup plan. Because one of the bad things about solar and wind energy is we don't yet have the technology. We will in the future, but we don't yet have the technology to store that power, right? So if you think about what that means, it's not always going to be sunny and it's not always going to be windy, but the power that those particular those ways of generating power generate, it's very hard for us right now to store them. It's very hard for us right now to store them. We will have the battery technology to store them and use that power later, but we just don't have that now. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see if, maybe if, let's say if a left-leaning analyst is on, let's say Fox News, and they say, hey, pull up ticker symbol CL, it's trading at $85 a barrel. Does Joe Biden get credit for bringing oil prices down if he was to blame solely for them going up? I think it's an interesting question. Dr. Longus has let renewable energy evolve naturally. Rebel Poet says the green push didn't functionally change anything to warrant price increase in the last year. The price jumped and profit margins massively shot up. Yeah, so the reason why, and you're right, Rebel Poet, in relation to the profit margin shot up. But if you look at ExxonMobil, if you look at Chevron, they made the majority of their money because refining margins were so high. And the reason why refining margins were so high is because they turned down about 3 million barrels worth of refining capacity, and nobody could have predicted the fast rebound from the COVID crisis, right? So as things rebounded so fast, they couldn't keep up with the demand. So obviously, basic supply and demand, the prices skyrocketed. You know, I think the CEO of Chevron said on the call, refining margins hit an all-time record high for the company. I think collectively Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Shell in Q2 alone, I think raked in about $48 billion in profits in Q2. Talk about a windfall of profits. Crazy. So we're crossing 3rd Avenue here. And we have a beautiful view of One Vanderbilt here. Who Dat Dave says, I think the next new growth industry will be hydrogen alternative fuel cells to replace batteries in EVs. Well, Who Dat Dave, do you remember from yesterday's stream, the Institute for Supply Management Services PMIs, they said the sector in the economy, in the services economy that had the most growth was mining. Interesting. Why do we think that is? Hey, Marcelo Gillis is Brazilian. Real will be the best investment next year. It and stock papers, be confident. That's a tip. Our local growth will be fantastic, says Marcelo. I hope so. Love that, Marcelo. David says, this has been going on since the Alaskan pipeline. I live in Texas. All right, Lexington Avenue now. I think we have to start making our way downtown. I didn't know we're already bumping up against a 2-hour stream here. I think lastly, to cap off the night, so that 30-year mortgage rate is actually coming down now. So I think we hit a high of about 5.40% on that 30-year fixed rate mortgage. We have now actually come down quite substantially here. And the reason for that is because if you pull up a chart of the US 10-year Treasury yield, oftentimes what you'll find is that they pretty much move in lockstep. So as that 10-year US Treasury yield comes down, so does the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So then the question begets, will this add another Kickstarter or Kickfire to get housing sales back on track again? Now, I don't know, because I think the feeling is already put in investors and first-time home buyers' stomachs that, you know what, maybe I'll wait until prices come down to buy a home. We'll have to see. We're passing Pershing Square. Every time we pass Pershing Square, I think of Bill Ackman, hedge fund manager Bill Ackman. You know, he was recently on CNBC talking about Visa. And I think I put that in the I think I dropped the link of Bill Ackman's interview with CNBC in the chat last time. But at the conclusion of all these streams, everybody, if you want, on my YouTube community page, we will be doing a stream recap. So everything we talk about on the stream is going to go right on the YouTube community page. So all of the links, all the resources. So tonight we will have Datadog's earnings call put up on the YouTube community page, Atlassian's investor deck. So if you guys want to do another quick review, if you're building your own financial models and such, feel free to check that out on the YouTube community page. Candace is, what is the Discord? So the Discord is just like a chat for everybody who watches the streams. If you guys want to, talk while we're not streaming or share ideas, that's a place where we could all go and hang out if you want to join us there too. Yeah, E-Babies, this is kind of a calm night for a Thursday in New York. You know what I noticed? I noticed after the 4th of July, the amount of tourists that were in the city sort of took a nosedive. The amount of tourists really fell off a cliff. So hopefully that's not going to be sustained, because even today, as I was walking through the city, I noticed a lot less people. I don't know, maybe everybody's going to come back after Labor Day, we'll see, but I definitely noticed a huge slowdown in foot traffic after the 4th of July. So now we're crossing Madison Avenue going towards Library Way. I think this is one of my favorite shots, looking all the way down at the Steven Schwartzman building. Hey, Nicholas Duras says, walks to Wall Street, that's because New York City has become infamous for crime. I don't know. I mean, I talk about how crime has gone up in the city as well. But I think it mostly has to do with just the new work environment that everybody's been accustomed to. Right? Working from home, working remote. If you think about how often people come to the office, it's probably not as often from before the pandemic, right? Maybe you come in 2 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, maybe. Yeah, Glorious, look at all that trash. I think that's why we have so many rats in the city. Because we have nowhere to put the trash. You have to put it on the sidewalk and wait for sanitation to come and get it. Ren1018 says, Tom, I wish YouTube Live would integrate AR, augmented reality, so you could point the camera, and it'll display the name. That would be cool too. Maybe like an augmented reality stream. Yeah, Two Harbors says, Tom, Times Square was full of people last night. What are you talking about? People all over the place? Yeah, I think mainly in like the tourist attraction areas, right? There'll be people there. But I'm talking about like throughout, like the vibrancy throughout the city in general. After the 4th of July, a teeny bit, a lot, I would say a lot less, if I'm being honest, tourist. But I think that's maybe normal. I mean, if you think about it, everybody wants to visit New York City during the 4th of July to see the fireworks, which I actually had the pleasure of going to this year. It was unbelievable. So if anybody hasn't been to the 4th of July fireworks in New York City, it's like you have to do it. That's like one of those must things you have to do. It's the most incredible experience ever. So if you've not yet viewed the 4th of July fireworks in person in New York, it's an absolute must, an absolute must. Wow, Liminal says the rat population in New York City is roughly 2 million. Jeez. Pancakes is crude is sideways right now. Yeah, I think we just broke below $85. So we're on 39th Street, East 39th Street. We're gonna walk downtown and then head over to Pennsylvania Station, where we'll conclude the stream. White says Apple is my go-to stock. Yeah, well, they definitely came off the back of an amazing quarter. You know, I think this is where me and Jim Cramer agree. I think we agree on the fact that Apple's one of those stocks you don't trade, you just own it. Right, with the amount of free cash Apple generates, with the way they maintain their gross margins, and just the dominance within their sector, right? And still growing at a multi-billion-dollar rate. Apple's a cash cow. Apple has more cash on their balance sheet than some small countries around the world. It's crazy to think about, but Jay Nibs is Apple forever. You know, Jay Nibs, it's interesting. Usually companies have a roughly like 20, I should say a stock, I shouldn't say companies. Stocks usually have like a 20-year life cycle, right? You know, if we were doing this stream back in the day, we would probably be talking about, oh, you gotta buy General Electric, you gotta buy General Electric. But now look where General Electric is today. It's nearly out of business. It's not out of business, but it's nearly out of business. It's a single-digit stock. It has a bunch of debt. But back in the day, that was like the American staple blue chip. Wow, check out this view of the empire, everybody. Hey, Candace, says tech runs the whole market and Apple trends really good. Debit spreads options are cheap also. This is Candace. Gregory says back to the Empire State Building. It's fantastic here. Jay Nibs says Apple until the new Apple comes along. Yeah, and I mean, Apple has been one of those, I would say Apple, Microsoft are the two outliers, right? Apple and Microsoft are the two outliers that have continued to innovate. You know, the problem with General Electric is they got so internally bulky that they stopped innovating. It's the same thing that happened with IBM. You know, if you think about IBM as a business, you know, back in the day, everybody wanted to work for IBM. It's like, oh, I gotta work for IBM. You know, and now the vast majority of the revenue at IBM doesn't come from the actual solutions they sell. It's essentially like a big consulting company. The vast majority of the revenue comes from consulting, which is quite interesting too. Pancakes is Amazon is expensive. I don't know. I think that Amazon, I think the biggest value with Amazon is their AWS web service business. Yeah, Mike C says Microsoft was also a dead stock 10 years ago. You're right. Yeah, Robert says IBM and GEFs have really lost their luster. Yeah, Dr. Longus is true about IBM. I think I told you guys, but I actually interviewed for a position at IBM back when they had their Watson healthcare unit. I think that unit has since been sold off. I forget which consulting company bought that unit, but I forget. Hey, Miss Melody is here, welcome. This is I stay away from Robinhood and coin stock. I think it's very wise to stay away from Robinhood. I think it's very wise. Photos from around the orcs. Is IBM really just a consulting company? It's not just a consulting company. I'm saying a lot of their revenue now, you'd be surprised about how much of their revenue comes from consulting. But they still have a cloud unit, they still sell software, they still have their mainframe business, obviously. But a lot of the revenue, if you look at, if you pull up their, 10Q or their 10K, you'll notice a lot of their earnings actually comes from just consulting. Hey, Con I Am is here, says greetings New York City lovers, welcome. D Hot says chip stocks now I think will soar. So are you making the correlation between the new CHIPS Act that the government passed? Maybe. I think that's a pretty good catalyst, but actually, you know what I've been watching? Obviously, we like to look for the stocks that are kind of bucking the trend and the first ones to break out. The first stocks that are sort of trying to break out here are a lot of the solar stocks, one of which is Solar Edge. Now, again, this is not something to say go buy it. But I'm noticing a lot of the leaders, or at least the ones that are trying to lead the market here, are solar. But if you guys have enjoyed the stream so far tonight, wow, check out this. LinkedIn has an office in this building. But if you're enjoying the stream so far tonight, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We tend to do these live streams about 5 days per week between New York City and Miami. Welcome, Con Am. Hey, Sabrina Fair is here. Good to see you, Sabrina. Yeah, so Mike C is a skeptic about the CHIPS Act. I think this ties into our conversation with should members of Congress be allowed to trade individual stocks? I think we all unanimously agreed the answer is no. I think we all unanimously agreed the answer was no on that. Hey, Points Traveler says, when will you be back in Miami next? I'm not sure. That is to be determined. Jeez, that guy better be careful. He's riding on the back of his friend's bike. Hey, Brian is here. Welcome, Brian. Good to see you. Hey, Jerry Barry says, love your stuff, dude. Thank you so much, Jerry. Appreciate it. So if you guys want to connect off stream, a lot of the times I will post my equity research on Twitter. So if you want to follow @WalksWallStreet on Twitter, you could always stay connected there. And this Tuesday, we will be back to our regular scheduled programming with the Behind the Street newsletter, which is an absolute free financial newsletter I write for everybody. And if you want to subscribe to it for free, if you type !news, NEWS, in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link to the Behind the Street newsletter where you could punch your email in and sign up for free. And you will get it every Tuesday. Wow, D-Hot says 30 years ago I was in global marine oil rig and leasing research. It's always changing. Wow. One of my worst investments was a company called Transocean. I'm not even sure if they're still around. They may have gone bankrupt. But the ticker symbol, I believe, was RIG, ticker symbol RIG. And this was way back in the day. And my thesis was, when President Trump got elected, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is going to deregulate the entire energy sector. So I'm going to buy a lot of the offshore drilling stocks. And this was when I was in college. I mean, I must have been a freshman. Stupid freshman. And essentially I lost all my money. But I think when we're young, we always make ridiculously poor investments. But yeah, that's what happens when you go based upon a hunch instead of actually looking at the financials. But you know what? Transocean may actually have emerged out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I'm not sure. I'm actually curious about that now. I'm going to have to look that up when I get on the train. Mike says, like Tom saying when I was young. Hey, Travelnista is here. Good to see you, Travelnista. Wow, Nicholas Dura, I did not notice that. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments about all of those, yeah, the trading cards. I'm not really into that stuff. I'm not really into art pieces either. But yeah, that's going really nuts now. Like people paying $1 million for baseball cards. Really insane. Con IM says, is Macy's still in business? Barely. It's holding on. It didn't get Amazon just yet. That's a nice shot of the Empire there. Photos from around New York says art will always have value, but determined value of a particular piece of art will always be in flux. That's true. That's a good point. Jonathan France is here. Good to see you, Jonathan France. But everybody, I want to thank you for coming to the stream tonight. I had a good time. I have to go home, got to wake up early, got to go to work tomorrow. But the good news is it's Friday tomorrow. We're going to have a good time on the stream tomorrow. Maybe we'll be downtown near Wall Street, walking around the New York Stock Exchange and the like. So if you want to join us right back here tomorrow for the live stream, we will go live at 8:30 p.m. So photos from around New York, I appreciate you joining tonight. Rebel Poet, thank you so much. Jonathan France, Marcello, Bagels and Walks, Joan, Sabrina Fair, NMB 045, Ruby Falcone, and everybody out there, thank you so much. For those of you who are new, hit the subscribe button if you want to join us for tomorrow night's live stream. And to the Mighty Bull, have a good night wherever you are, because there is always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. And I'll see you guys right back here at 8:30 tomorrow. Have a good one.